This week's guest on Quant Corner is Eric Yakes from EpochVC. Eric, I wanted to talk to you about Ripple because you did an awesome summary of it. And right after that, I saw Patrick Bet-David do a survey in which he asked which crypto asset had the best long-term tech. And Ripple got 43.8% of the vote. Bitcoin only got 35. What is going on here? Why do you think so many people are in favor of Ripple?
So when I wrote that thread, I really quickly did some research and looked into, okay, well, what's kind of the value proposition here? What's just like the 101? And the story of Ripple kind of tells itself. It's just like, here's a coin. It's been around since 2012. And I think if anybody asks the question, like, well, how has it actually been used? What has actually been done with it? When you have a technology that's been around for more than a decade at this point, and nobody's using it, then you need to ask questions why. And I don't think there's any question that, like, in the crypto industry, it's littered with fraud and scams and false marketing and all of these other things. And I think that Ripple is an organization that has done a lot of, taken a lot of like disingenuous steps towards the way that they're marketing the company. They went on a campaign where, well, I guess I'll start with, they issued a token as a way to finance Ripple as a network to be adopted. Since there's been these different directions they've tried to go, but the original intention of this project was to facilitate remittance payments and be some sort of like banking settlement network. They want to create a CBDC. Like, that's ultimately what they want to do. And which I'm fundamentally against, but like putting that aside, it's a question of like, will it actually work? Will it be adopted? And it's been around for forever. They create this token. It was a huge pre-mine. They effectively just, sell it to finance different marketing initiatives. That's all they've really done. Is they captured a ton of value from the token during the 2017 rally. And, everybody knows that these things don't trade off of fundamentals. They trade around narratives and hype. And we've seen that time and time again throughout cycles. And Ripple was so successful doing that it gave them a very significant treasury and firepower to be able to like implement a bunch of different marketing campaigns. And so, like, why do people in Ripple think Ripple is valuable? The best answer you're going to get is people either try to make some sort of argument about how it's good tech, but most people just point to how many, like, quote unquote partnerships Ripple has. And what they did is they took a bunch of financing and they went to a bunch of banks, big name players, and they said, we'll be your solution to integrate into blockchain. And every institution is like, okay, well, we want to have a blockchain strategy. This thing's popular. Everybody's talking about it. These guys are the perfect ones. They created something called like RippleNet, which is effectively allowing banks to like integrate well into the Ripple ledger. And in doing that, they have all these different partnerships that exist. But the question is like, well, are people actually using it? And the answer is no. Like, RippleNet's done 30 billion in volume since this all started. Bitcoin did daily volume of about 50 billion yesterday. Like, so Bitcoin did more yesterday than Ripple did in 13 years. Like, so what's the difference there? And it's because people don't actually use it. It's just kind of like this smoke and mirror marketing campaign. Nobody really wants to use this illiquid volatile currency as a bridge currency for like cross-border payments. Like, my company, we've invested in a company that's using Bitcoin to solve that actual problem. Nobody wants to use XRP to do that. And then the argument's like, well, what do they want to use? Bitcoin and stablecoins are kind of the solutions that you'd be using for those types of things. And then people in XRP would argue, well, we can launch stablecoins on the Ripple ledger. And it's just like, yeah, but, Tether's, a decade ahead of you on that one. And everybody around the world is using it. Like, good luck getting your own stable coin off the ground. And they might get some traction and they might get some political favor, but it's basically a bet on stroke of the pen that these guys who basically convince the market they have something valuable that's not are going to be able to lobby in Washington. And I just don't like them because of what they've done politically. And their strategy for existence is like, every reason I joined Bitcoin is I'm against people who behave in this way fundamentally. So they are this group that is, they were actively against Bitcoin, some members of their leadership team, and how they're politically campaigning because it is competition for them. And yeah, so I don't know. That's just kind of the 101. But I think it's dumb. It's definitely not something worth investing in. Its best case scenario is that it's a CBDC, and its XRP token is not going to be used for that. There isn't value that's going to
Right.
accrue to that token. So if you're thinking that,
Right.
it's never going to win from the token.
Right. That's a great point. It's almost like the way I'm looking at it is they are using their token holders to finance their business, and the token holders
Yeah,
will not realize any of those gains.
that's right.
Do you agree? Okay.
Well, tokens don't
So
trade on fundamentals, so it's like I have no idea where it's going. Like I don't know how many more people can be convinced that this is a valuable thing. I know the game's going to end at some point. I'll be surprised if it continues to go up for sure, but there isn't economic value being created here. There's marketing initiatives, people posting pictures of, you know, Brad Garlinghouse with Trump, and everybody's buying it, thinking based on some sort of hope and dream that Trump is going to integrate Brad Garlinghouse's company. This isn't some decentralized architect. It's Brad Garlinghouse's company as the fundamental settlement layer for banking in the U.S. on a CBDC.
right.
Um, and that's stupid. I mean, crazier things have happened, so who knows? But like, who? I don't know why you would invest around that. That's a really dumb thing to try to invest in.
Yeah, great point. So just moving on to something more interesting here with the primary network in the world, rather than what people thought on Patrick Bet David's survey. Saylor was just at CPAC, right? And he stated that he said there's only one country that could maybe get to 20% ownership of the Bitcoin network, and he thought it was the United States. You and your firm, which you've done tremendous research and you continue to do great research in this space. I love your writing. You just put out a report called the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's your 2024 like in review report, and you're actively engaging in this community. You're actively putting money to work. So tell us a little bit about that report and what you see coming for Bitcoin in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we did it is because in the world that I come from, I used to work for like a buyout private equity fund, and like we would look at different industries all the time. And whenever I wanted to understand a brand new industry, I'd be like, okay, where's like the primer on it? Where's the annual report? Uh, Bitcoin's grown in very different way than most industries, and there's a wealth of information out there. But we wanted to create like an institutional quality annual report for reference that primarily investors, when they're looking into the industry, are going to be able to get a bit of perspective of what's going on. And we wanted to do it as in depth as we could. But we came up with that idea back in September, and we didn't have much time. It's 30,000 words, 150 pages. So there was a lot of late nights that went into it, getting it off as quickly as we did, because it's effectively like a book. Yeah, so we cover a bunch of different things. We cover the state of Bitcoin adoption. We try to look at like every metric you could really look at. We look at the price, we look at its correlation, we look at its dominance against other cryptocurrencies. We look at how individuals are adopting it over time and what like the total population in the U.S. is versus globally. We look at how businesses are adopting it. What our corporate holdings look like? What does the broader amount of business ownership look like? We look at how ETFs have grown over time. We look at nation state adoption, and we kind of piece together like the market size of that and what it could look like if nation states really start to allocate into it. And then we look at some of the other broader like cryptocurrency adoption, like what other cryptocurrencies are leveraging Bitcoin in some sort of other way, and how is it expanded throughout that, and eventually will that start to shift back on Bitcoin? And then so like that's kind of our overview on like an adoption section, and then we move into like the Bitcoin corporate finance section. That's because it's such a highlight of what's happened over the past year. We basically view Bitcoin corporate finance strategies as something that's just started. It's going to grow a lot more. And there's going to be a lot more people that are leveraging their positions as a CFO. And every Bitcoin cycle has some sort of source of like major credit expansion that begins. And we think that this is probably going to be it for this cycle. And we're probably going to have a bit of a boom and bust that comes from businesses that all want to have a pop in their stock price, and they adopt Bitcoin and they take out a loan to buy even more. There's going to be a ton of new loans that happen. When you look at like the repeal of SAB 121, banks are going to start lending into this space, and banks are going to have a pretty big competitive advantage against incumbent lenders to lend at, more favorable interest rates. And once that starts happening, a lot more people, well, if debt gets cheaper, then they're going to want to finance even more. So there's a lot of variables that are aligned to kind of put tailwinds behind this Bitcoin corporate finance strategy. And there's going to be a bunch of cowboy CFOs who take on too much risk and issue debt at pretty poor terms. And if there is any sort of contraction in Bitcoin, then they're going to get washed out pretty quick. That's kind of our expectation for like the next major driver of a cycle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're going to relate that to price appreciation of Bitcoin this cycle and beyond, I'm envisioning that you believe volatility is going to remain the same, if not increase.
So I think it'll just be more of a blip. Like volatility is something that is it's been declining very significantly. Like we kind of cover this in the report, and it's one of the primary price drivers that I'm looking at. Like I'm not like a price guy looking to time markets or anything like that, but I look at structural changes, and I think that kind of helps us get an understanding of where Bitcoin's going. Most important thing I care about is how it's correlated with other asset classes. It's still very highly correlated. At the beginning of last year, it actually was declining in correlation for a period of time. And then that subsequently reversed in the latter half of the year, which is a bit of a bummer, because the second we get some sort of structural long-term reversal of correlation with other asset classes is when investors are going to look at, which right now I think investors are all starting to think 1% to 5% allocation range. But like if we get a significant decoupling of Bitcoin, then I think they're going to be thinking in the 10 to 30% range. And
wow.
That's when the capital that goes in is a lot more significant.
So it's Bitcoin moving to this safe haven asset as opposed to a correlated volatility asset or growth asset.
Right. And I think that is derived from volatility going down. And so like as long as volatility is like structurally going down, then it's going to make the asset more stable over time. And I think that all of that's going to, increase its safe haven status.
Very interesting. Eric, you're a wealth of knowledge. I recommend that everybody visits you on X. What is your handle on X?
Just my name, Eric Yakes, ERICYAKES.
Download the report. Check it out, everybody. Eric, thank you for being a part of the show, sharing your knowledge with us. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you don't miss any other great guests like Eric. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So you've heard Bitcoin is the new gold rush by now. As world leaders on all sides have endorsed it as the future of money, and now you're looking to get started, we'll show you how. It's actually easier than you think. First, go to your nearest Byte Federal ATM and turn your cash to coin. Byte Federal has over 1,200 locations around the country with the highest daily limits. Go to our website, bytefederal.com, to find the nearest ATM to you. Log into any wallet, then create an account, deposit your US cash, and instantly convert it to Bitcoin. That's it. We are the only US manufacturer and operator in the Bitcoin ATM industry, and our US-based live customer service is second to none. Go on, give it a whirl, and don't get left behind. Click the link below.